to me way.
Hello, this is the Shanty Show, the show about sea shanties. We're Pressgang Mutiny. I'm Richard.
I'm Tim.
I'm James.
I'm Stefan.
And today we've got an awesome episode up for you. We have the legendary, trailblazing female shanty group, the Johnson Girls, the Mighty Fine Girls, joining us today. So let's get right into it.
Did you ever see a wild goose sailing o'er the ocean?
Ranzo, Ranzo, way.
It's just like them pretty girls when they gets the notion.
Ranzo, Ranzo, way.
The other morning I was walking by the river.
Ranzo, Ranzo, way.
I saw a young girl walking with her topsails all a-quiver.
Ranzo, Ranzo, way.
Said, pretty fair maid, and how are you this morning?
Ranzo, Ranzo, way.
She said, none the better for the seeing of you.
That's right.
Ranzo, Ranzo, way.
Oh, the bully boats are coming, don't you hear the paddles rolling?
Ranzo, Ranzo, hooray, hooray.
The bully boats are coming down the river, she's a bowling.
Ranzo, Ranzo, hooray.
Oh, the bully boats are coming down the Mississippi floating.
Ranzo, Ranzo, hooray, hooray.
The bully boats are coming and the cows are all a-waiting.
Ranzo, Ranzo, hooray.
As I walked out one morning for to hear the steamboats rolling.
Ranzo, Ranzo, hooray, hooray.
I met a pretty maiden and with baskets she was laden.
Ranzo, Ranzo, hooray.
I'm bound away to leave you, but I never shall deceive you.
Ranzo, Ranzo, hooray, hooray.
I'm bound away to leave you, my half pay I'm going to leave you.
Ranzo, Ranzo, hooray.
And it's when I come to meet you, it's with kisses I will greet you.
Ranzo, Ranzo, hooray, hooray.
It's when I come to meet you, it's with kisses I will greet you.
Ranzo, Ranzo, hooray.
Poor old Reuben Ranzo.
Ranzo, boys, Ranzo.
Poor old Reuben Ranzo.
Ranzo, me boys, Ranzo.
Ranzo was no sailor.
Ranzo, boys, Ranzo.
He was a New York tailor.
Ranzo, me boys, Ranzo.
Ranzo was no sailor.
Ranzo, boys, Ranzo.
Shipped him aboard of a whaler.
Ranzo, me boys, Ranzo.
Ranzo was no beauty.
Ranzo, boys, Ranzo.
He would not do his duty.
Ranzo, me boys, Ranzo.
They gave him lashes 30.
Ranzo, boys, Ranzo.
Because he was so dirty.
Ranzo, me boys, Ranzo.
But the captain's daughter Susie.
Ranzo, boys, Ranzo.
She begged her dad for mercy.
Ranzo, me boys, Ranzo.
She gave him an education.
Ranzo, boys, Ranzo.
Taught him navigation.
Ranzo, me boys, Ranzo.
She gave him wine and water.
Ranzo, boys, Ranzo.
And a bit more than she ought to.
Ranzo, me boys, Ranzo.
We're homeward bound from China, all on board of a limey liner.
Ranzo, Ranzo, hooray, hooray.
We're bound for Yokohama with a load of grand pianos to
my lonely Ranzo, hooray.
We're bound for old Gibraltar with a load of bricks and mortar.
Ranzo, Ranzo, hooray, hooray.
We're bound for to Santiago with a load of German lager to me.
Hi-ho, mi Ranzo Ray.
We're bound for Valparaiso with a load of rusty razors.
Ranzo, Ranzo, hooray, hooray.
We're bound for Buenos Aires with a load of green canaries to me.
Hi-ho, mi Ranzo Ray.
We'll plow the ocean over like a proper deep sea rover.
Ranzo, Ranzo, hooray, hooray.
We'll tie her up in London and we'll all go on the Rantan to me.
Hi-ho, mi Ranzo Ray.
Did you ever see a wild goose sailing on the ocean?
Ranzo, Ranzo, way.
Just like them Johnson girls when they gets the notion.
Ranzo, Ranzo, way.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
And I'm excited to have such a big crowd of people here to talk shanties. Thank you for joining us.
Such an illustrious crowd of people.
That's right.
Yeah.
Joy, can you tell us just a little bit about that arrangement and that song?
Well, I can tell you about my part of it. It's Bert Lloyd through Louisa Jo Killen. It's a double pull halyard shanty, and it's somewhat Irish in nature, being the wild goose shanty.
What was the thinking behind arranging, the similar sort of different versions of Ranzo and putting those together as kind of one medley?
Well, we wanted to do something that we weren't just stopping and starting constantly. We sing a song, we stop, we sing another song, we stop. So we wanted to do some kind of arrangements where we just launched right in from one to the other. And since we basically knew Ranzo, we just found various Ranzo songs and put them together.
And it wasn't deliberate at first, because we were in a rehearsal and it just kind of came up that the three of them knew different Ranzo versions. And we all went, ah. And then I was the lone person who didn't have a Ranzo version. So I had to go off and find one. And I found one through the Short Sharp Shanty collection.
Yeah, because that was the one that I'd not heard before. I'd heard the other three.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we decided to, string them together. And it's been, just different for us, kind of a different arrangement, and just fun to perform. And it's, there's always like a kind of that anticipation, like, that kind of energy that comes through as we sing it.
Yeah, strong medley.
Mm-hmm.
We have two that I can think of that we do. One with Storm Along John, and then one that James surprised us with in the studio so early in the morning. He's like, "Here's 3 different versions. Go learn them, and we're gonna record it." It's pretty fun to present though how the different, how the same song can show up very differently.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I feel the word Ranzo is a funny one that pops up in different shanties, and no one seems to really know what it means. The best estimation I've heard is it might be a corruption of the name Lorenzo.
Mm-hmm. Portuguese.
Yeah, maybe an Azorian sailor or something like that.
Yeah.
And there's a Dutch one as well. Allison can probably talk about that one.
Well, actually, the when I learned this my version, it was Rando.
Rando.
But it just kind of felt funny, especially when the other three were singing Ranzo. So, confession, I changed it.
There was no fourth Ranzo.
The Dutch version is Rendo Way.
Rando.
Rando.
Yeah.
Huh.
Rendo.
It's a counting song, but it's a maritime song.
There's lots of theories about it. Hugill writes a bit about it. For those who don't know, Stan Hugill, Shanties from the Seven Seas. He's a good source, and he talks about the origins of Ranzo somewhat.
Oh my goodness! If this is their first episode of the show, then they haven't heard of. Maybe they haven't heard of Shanties from the Seven Seas, but I think that book, the Bible as we call it, is referenced on just about every show. So we have a few different things we'd love to talk to you about, but that's a natural segue. And since you're pulling out the tome itself, maybe we can talk a little bit about your experiences with Stan and your thoughts on his work and singing, and how did you come to meet him, and how was your time with him?
Well, it was fantastic. I got to meet him when he first came over to Mystic. I think it was in '79, and he first did a concert in my hometown in Hartford, Connecticut. And Don Sinetti and I went to the concert, and he had his, illustrations and boards and so forth, and explaining how the shanties worked. And we were just, spellbound. And then he would come to the festival, and he was climbing up the rigging in bare feet the first time that I saw him when he was in his 70s then. So he was vibrant and colorful personality. As he aged, he'd bring his wife over, and she was able to debunk a lot of the tall stories. She added a very interesting dimension to his dynamic. But we learned after a number of years that not only did Stan have this wonderful book and actual recollections and collected from deck sources like Tobago Smith and Harding the Barbarian, but we also learned that he was an accomplished self-taught artist. And when he spent time in World War II as a prisoner of war, he painted something called the Sacking of Panama, which sits in his house. It's a huge 6 by 8 foot canvas, and it is in very muted colors because that was all that was available to him. I hope some museum gets a hold of that. But this is one of his paintings of a China tea clipper that he did for me.
Wow.
Can you see that?
Yeah. Beauty.
I only met him a couple times at South Street, but there was, all the folks I heard as a kid seemed larger than life, but he, of all people, just seemed epic. There was just something about him that was unforgettable.
Well, and all of you have some history and encounters with William Dorflinger as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we all knew him.
Our early days at South Street.
Oh,
yes.
I remember him from the 60s and 70s at South Street. Bonnie and Joy knew him then too, I believe.
It's actually my first book of Shanties was his book.
Mm-hmm.
And it was given to me by the parents of David Kleiman, and as a birthday present for my 20th birthday. And then I met him at Folk Music Society events, and he used to come to so many things. And I had the pleasure of spending a lot of time with him over some of the residential weekends that we had, that we talked a lot about the shanties, a lot about leaving of Liverpool, which there's a controversy whether there is just one source, but we won't go into the controversy here. But for the longest time, there was one source, which was his source at Sailor's Snug Harbor of leaving of Liverpool.
Very cool. So I want to talk a little bit about the South Street Seaport and your history with it as a band, and maybe kind of rewind the tape a bit. Like take us back to the origins of the Johnson Girls, and I'd love to just hear how that all came together.
Well,
oh, I see. One of those stories.
A long time ago, I was 4 years old, and my father he was always looking for things to do with 3 young children under 5, and he saw a blurb in the New York Times that Bernie Clay had put in, Bernie Clay of the Ex-Seamen Institute, that said, South Street Seaport, free music, kids welcome. And at the halftime, they'd say to the whatever families were there, okay, now it's going to get a little bawdy. You might want to take the kiddies home. And my father was like, nope. And we sat there every week And one day after this, I went to school and I sang The Good Ship Venus. And and the teacher called and spoke to my mother, and my mother said, well, she just heard it last night. She has no idea what it's about. And but we went going, and I first met Joy at that time, and Bonnie, who didn't know because I was too young. We sort of were running around like wild urchins, but
That's funny. I'm reminded a little bit about a family that runs a music sort of institution in Toronto called the Cameron House. And one of the guys from the family was saying that when he was in kindergarten, he got a phone call home from the teacher to his parents saying, you know, your son's been singing some song about trying to get his baby out of jail, you know. But of course, that's sort of like the power of folk music. We heard this, and there he is singing it innocently. And I just love that about the sort of oral nature of folk music.
My friend Matt was taking his young daughter, 3-4 years old, for a drive, and she just was sitting in the back saying, "Sing It's a Dam, sing It's a Dam." And it took him, a few minutes to realize she was asking for, it's a damn tough life full of toil and strife. It's a dam.
I have 2 boys now, 18 and 21, and my husband and I sang ballads to them as their lullabies, house carpenter, things like that. And but of course they grew up hearing shanties, and they would have the most fun counting how many times "damn" came up in Rolling Down to Old Now Way, because they were, like at that time maybe we were 7 and 10, and they were like, oh my God, and they would count on their fingers, and then if they could sing along, they just thought it was the coolest thing to be able to swear.
Yeah, for sure. I got my daughter up on stage. You guys remember at the local, and to hear her sing "Where You Break Your Bleeding Neck" from donkey riding. I can't. She was 3 and a bit maybe. So it's funny how the lyrics that we irresponsibly expose our children to, or that our parents did. So hey, look,
yeah. So and then we were all members of the New York Packet down at South Street, which was like their resident shanty group. And it was in the mid '90s that Bonnie and Allison and Joy were at Mystic, and they saw all the beer-bellied, bearded shanty guys singing at Mystic, and they said, I think it's time for a women's group, to start. And I came later. I came like a year into the group, but it was kind of a mesh of like singing a lot at South Street, being so comfortable singing down there. Hey, why not make this more of something?
I'm going to back it up just a little bit, because when I got into shanties at South Street was the Ex-Seamen's Institute singing. We became friends. They've been friends of mine for a long time. I won't say how long. But I ended up working as a volunteer at South Street and fish oiling and steel wire brushing and fish oiling the hull of a steam lighter that was at South Street. It was the only steam lighter left in the world at that point. Was ultimately scuttled, but I still have a picture of it.
Sorry, steel brushing. So you rubbed it to get the rust off of it with a steel brush.
That's correct.
And then you rubbed
and then
it
you fish oil.
Why fish oil?
To lubricate.
You had it? No, I know oil tip, but why fish oil?
I don't know. I was young.
Andy.
What did I know?
All right, we're gonna have to look this up. That is so curious.
Sorry to interrupt. Because it was cheap.
And we were working on a float on the river right next to a raw sewage outlet, so that was always very, very pleasant in the East River. But so fast forward a bunch of years, and Bonnie and I are at Mystic, and we're sitting in the back, and we're looking at each other, and saying, "It's time." I think we actually carved our initials in some of the wood of the boat shed, and decided that it was time for a female group. So
thank goodness you did.
Now I must
and the
ask.
rest, as they say, is her story. No.
I joined a year later, and I came from the Irish music scene, so I was singing in sessions in New York several nights a week. And I loved it, but because that's the music I grew up with, but it's solo singing. And I really miss singing harmony singing, which I had done, you know, in choral, in choirs in school and musicals and stuff like that. So when somebody told me about the shanty sing down at South Street, and I fell into that, I was elated. I just couldn't believe how wonderful it was. And not that I left the Irish music scene totally, but I definitely kind of jumped ship, went over to shanties, and just absolutely love singing harmony shanties. And
Well,
Townsend Girls.
it was quite a summer that time that Joy and I sat under that boat shed. But my history with this goes back. My first group of women singers was called the Chelsea Clipper, which I founded in 1979 or 80. The most interesting person in that group was a woman who sailed the Ernestina, the only woman sailor from the Cape Verde Islands. And she really offered a whole different perspective on the singing. It was really nice. Her name was Peggy Lyons. May she rest in peace. But it was nice to have a sailor on board. I had some sailing experience too, just with a small sloop. The idea of having women sing these songs kept occurring to me as I'd go to the Eagle Tavern or down to South Street and wondered, well, how come there's not a woman leading one of these songs? What's going on here? I don't quite get this. And you kind of sit back and you're kind of polite, but then you kind of get safety in numbers when you get a few other girls together, and that's it.
Well, the interesting thing, Bonnie, is as a kid growing up at, literally growing up at South Street with the music, it didn't quite dawn on me, because I was just watching, I was a kid, that there really were not women until the day that Heather Wood got up and sang a song and led a shanty. And she had been told, she was in a group that she could do choruses with shanties, but she wasn't allowed to lead shanties. And when she came and sang at South Street, she was so powerful. And I don't remember what year it was, but I remember suddenly it dawned on me. It's like, oh, there's no female singing these things. And from that moment on, I was like, well, I'm going to sing them no matter what. In England, and maybe Joy and Bonnie can speak a little more. In England, especially, it was frowned. They were considered men's songs, and women singing them. When we got invited, Joy and I had gone to Mystic to see the Cornish
St. Ives, the St. Ives fishermen.
Friends, fishermen. They were
Port Isaac.
Port Isaac. They were a bunch of. They did the lifeboat, the rescue, and they came and they were doing a concert at Mystic on a weeknight. So Joy drove up with me and my friend Erica, and Jeff Kaufman was going to lead off at the halftime, and he did Johnson Girls, and we'd already had the group, and he beckoned for us to come up to sing Johnson Girls with him, and then he told us to sing. So we I looked at Joy looked at me, she's like, won't you help me? So we did Won't You Help Me to Raise a Boy, and Vic Legg came up to us after and said, I didn't know women had that kind of balls. Would you like to come?
No. He said, you girls sing like you have balls.
And so and
I don't know if you can use that in the podcast, but
we're definitely using that in the podcast.
So he invited us, and we went over. We had some trepidation. We were warned by all guys we know that had performed over there. It's like, you're going to get some resistance. You're going to get some resistance. So it was summertime. So we all had dresses on, and we got up to sing, and in come the local shanty group. especially bearded, especially beer-bellied, and they all stood in the back.
No, they were at the bar. That was Bodmin Folk Club.
Okay, so Bodmin Folk Club is where they first saw us, and they stood in the back, and they just had these scowls on their faces until we started singing, and then they slowly, their arms came down, and they're like, oh, and then they started singing along, but literally it was this wall of resistance to us at first, until we proved that we weren't singing, you know, these dainty little melodies.
I saw Vic Legg today, and he sends his best to everyone. And he was very much responsible for us going on that trip, because he convinced the organizers of Wadebridge. We had no CD in hand at that point in time, and he convinced the organizers of Wadebridge to book us. And he also convinced the Bodmin Folk Club to book us. And their sort of home shanty crew over there is the Rum and Shrub Shantymen, if you've ever heard of them, fine singers. And we've become fast friends over the years. It's just been breaking that ice just opened up a whole another stream, because, you know, we always had this kind of British-centric, male-centric notion about this stuff, and then these 4 American women come and kind of burst that bubble.
Now, to that point, and to go back to Heather Wood for a second, Heather, of course, is I can't really call her a national treasure, because I think she's really an international treasure, having been from the UK and living in New York for so long. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't think that Heather ever led a shanty with the young tradition. I think that may be what she was referring to, that at the time she wasn't really, she was welcome to sing along with them in the backing part, but not to lead a shanty. And in the Mystic Shanty Blast this year, she mentioned that topic in particular, and she said it was thanks to really the work of groups like the Liverpool Judies and the Johnson Girls that this is more accepted now. So I'm finding this very interesting that you guys were inspired by her, but clearly she is very thankful for the work that you guys have done.
It's a symbiotic relationship.
Very much so.
And
not to overlook it, Carol P. Weiss. Carol played, she was part of the Liverpool Judies. And I have to say that without really, we never had, we knew about them singing, but for me, they were never my role models. My role models were people like Stan and Don Sinetti and Lou Killen, and the men that were performing this music, and David Jones and so forth. So getting their support was wonderful. Stan was very much realizing that if women didn't start singing this, these songs would die. He inscribed his book to me, "Keep these ancient ditties alive, dear." He meant it. He meant for everybody to sing these songs, because the demon was gone. And Bill Dorflinger, he was another very important supporter. And Don Sinetti. Whenever we go someplace, all of these fellows who are in these groups or strong singers of their own always invite us up to sing with them.
And don't forget Craig Edwards
Craig
as well.
and Jeff Kaufman.
And Jeff.
For Bitter when they were around.
Yeah, Craig and Jeff were very instrumental. The whole crowd at Mystic.
And to take nothing away from, you know, what you did and accomplished, though, and you know, fantastic that you had that support. But you know, just last week for International Women's Day, we posted, look, here are some of our favorite female shanty singers and groups. And I think we had, a handful, maybe 7 or 8. And the comment section, we sort of said, tell us who else is out there that we should be listening to. And the comment section blew up, right? It's, She Shanties, Silver Darlings, you guys, the Norfolk Broads, the Bearded Ladies, Nicole Singer, Heather Wood, Celeste Bernardo, on and on and on and on and on, which is phenomenal. And it's all, it came out of what you were doing and what the Liverpool Judies did and that whole thing, that's an amazing outcome.
We didn't need TikTok.
Although you have popped up on it.
Yes, we have.
We did it the hard way.
But I think it's important that, we all just love to sing, but we love to sing harmonies, and we just love maritime music. And we've really become, are the four of us, kind of like a family, over 20, almost 25 years now. And we come at it, differently sometimes, but we always kind of find a way to organically create our arrangements and just really enjoy ourselves when we perform on stage. And I think that's, that has never died out. We really, really enjoy singing together.
Yeah.
The other thing that's interesting, I was just going to say about the harmony, and when women in general come into sea shanties, before us, the men sing, you guys sing in different keys. So the approach is different. You pitch things differently. One of the reasons I think I love harmony so much is I learned it in self-defense growing up, because I couldn't necessarily sing the melody. I learned harmony because that's the only way I could sing along at a certain point. And these ladies that I sing with are amazing harmony singers. We'll bring a song, one of us will get an idea, like, oh, the soundscape of this, and then every one of us contributes to everything. We're organic. We don't plot things out and write them down. And it's just a very interesting approach. And I think that's one reason it's worked, and we've been together longer than almost most groups, because we really enjoy the singing, the friendship, and making a difference. For example, little girls, when we first started, especially, little girls would come up to us and say, can I sing like that? Can I sing that song? And we're like, yeah, and give them a CD and help them out. And I know how important it was for me as a little girl that people encouraged me as a child to sing along, and they tolerated when we did silly things, like I had a lassie dog, and they'd sing, will you go, lassie, go? And I'd go, no, I won't. But they embraced us and brought us into the community. And I think that's one thing that we've really tried to do, is embrace people, especially the younger generations, to feel comfortable and strike out to do things.
When we all come together, it would be very easy to kind of sing shanties in a cookie cutter way, call and response, and kind of fall into that formula. But I think what's been nice over these 25 years is challenging ourselves to come up with a different kind of arrangement. Sometimes we'll layer ourselves in. Sometimes we'll do a double barrel shanty where we both share a lead, or we'll every other. And so we really have been having fun with just coming up with a lot of different arrangements, so that it doesn't get boring for us, and it's not boring, hopefully, for people who listen. But we have all come from like a choral background, and so we have those harmonies, but of course all the other influences that everyone here has mentioned is also in our head. So it's just it's truly organic. We've had people say, who does your arrangements? And we just have to laugh and say, we just figure it out.
Trial and error.
Now, Deirdre and Allison, just to follow up on a couple of things you guys mentioned there. Allison, you mentioned the notion of the keys being different when it's a male group or a female group singing, just where the song kind of sits. And Deirdre, you mentioned about the arrangements and sort of coming to that in a somewhat organic way, despite the sort of, I hope the word despite is correct there, despite the choir background. Right. And Richard and I have a choir background. One of the things we've run into is sometimes if we get to about a 4-part harmony, and at one point there were 7 of us singing together, and it could get very murky after that. Even 4 parts could start to get a little crunchy at times.
Or sometimes even jazzy.
I feel about the same about jazz chords and shanties as I do about shanties and jazz music. I love jazz music, and I respect it. It's an incredible tradition.
Fair game.
But sometimes,
Yeah.
well, that's a different conversation that we've touched on in another episode. I don't know that we need to go down that.
No, but I think
Have a little go.
Bonnie will often be the sort of I don't know what the police. She'll come in and say, "Oh, it's getting too girly. Let's just kind of bring it back down. Don't overthink it. Let's just
I think you guys strike a really beautiful balance, and it seems to happen very effortlessly for you guys. Although I'm sure you guys, you're very well trained over the years. Do you guys find it sometimes challenging to sing with men and women at the same time, given those key differences, or is that not really an issue for you guys?
No, if we start singing "Leave Her Johnny," the men are lost.
Yeah.
And they have to find their key, and we're off and running. We did it for years. Now it's your turn.
Okay, fair enough.
And there's enough women now singing. There's enough variety in when you go to a shanty blast or a shanty. You're half of the people there, women.
That's right.
And so it's become much more, an amalgam rather than two factions.
Yeah, I was going to say when Allison was talking about harmonizing in self-defense, I was going to say it works the other way around too. So I think probably a lot of us guys have similar experiences in the opposite sort of direction.
It just makes us all better harmony singers.
Absolutely.
Hey, I wanted to ask a question about where you find your shanties, because as I think I said off the top, right, a couple of at least your first two albums, like they're lodged in my brain, and I can't even count on my hands the number of songs I've stolen from those albums over the years, and I don't hear them popping up in too many places, from books. But you clearly have access to. Yeah, go ahead, Joy.
From books, from field recordings that are, sometimes we take a song and we change it and use it in a different way. From old recordings, from the internet. These days we do a lot of research on the internet, which is great. I once did I went to Pinewoods Camp one summer, and Bob Walzer was doing a class in digging for gold in the Carpenter collection. And this is before it was online. And he had all these scraps of paper, and I went literally digging through them to find something, and found one, and I took it, and there was only a little snippet, and we fleshed it out from there and brought it to the group, and and we went with it. So we often do that with songs. Bonnie will find something in a book that's literally 2 lines and go from there. My song that we call Brandio was from the Creighton collection. It was collected by an old sailor named Sandy Stoddard, and all there was a snippet, and it's just finding it and then filling it out. And you can take floating verses from however many songs, which is what the Shantymen did half the time anyway. They ran out of they're pulling up anchor, and they've run out of verses. They just start pulling verses from anything. It's done all the time. It's what they do. And if they forget words, they make them up. So do we. So if we're singing a song and all of a sudden it's a song we've done 1,000 times and the words just go right out of your head, and it happens, you just make something up.
We also have gotten songs from people, and we got our Mama Liza from the Northern Neck Shantymen.
Well, we did one version of Mama Liza.
Yeah.
I think we heard that story, that you might have learned a few extra verses that might not be written down anywhere.
Yeah. Well, I did write them down. They're on a little envelope in my closet.
It's a brown piece of paper. It's
And I think we heard them sing it, and then went off and kind of cobbled together our own version, and then saw them again at Mystic, and they took us behind the shed and kind of shared like the spicier versions that or verses that they would sing when they were out for a day's fishing, but they couldn't really bring that to the stage, and to the yeah. So
They told us
And-
that those verses were never to be shared.
They shared them. They shared them.
They
with
shared
us.
them with us.
We had proven that we deserve. They said that we had proven that we could hear it, even though we were ladies. They had never. Their wives had never heard them. Their girlfriends. When they sang this for us, they had said no female ears had heard this before. So,
but I think this whole process also is an example of what we do, and probably what a lot of folk singers do. People might give us verses, but we're not going to copy them exactly. We're not going to copy exactly how someone else is doing a song. So we'll go, okay, thanks, great, and then we'll take them back, we'll mix them up into verses that maybe we have found from books, and then we'll truly come up with, hopefully, our own version of it. So it doesn't sound like, exactly like somebody else's.
Which is sometimes how we know where somebody, maybe a particular person got it from somebody who got it from somebody, but they got it from us. So it's fun to watch that happen.
It's interesting to hear that you do that sort of very active arrangement, because that's the other thing that stands out to me from your body of work, is that it hangs together, right? It's unmistakably Johnson Girls individually, but as a collection as well. So is there something that, like, do you look for things specifically as you're trying to hunt down songs, or is it they're just songs that stick and they just stick because they feel right?
They stick because they feel right.
Yeah, and then they develop, and then I hear when we're in a room, four of us in a circle, all of a sudden you hear the fifth voice. Then you know you have a sound, and you will hear the fifth voice in a lot of what we do.
But over the years, we've brought songs to the group, and they're great songs, and everybody's excited about them. And for whatever reason, they don't stick.
Right.
We can't get the harmonies going right, or just for many reasons, they fall by the wayside. So, that's the folk process. Just
sometimes we revisit them, and they
Yeah.
do stick. That's
They do.
the other
Yep.
fun part.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think we should have a concert that Kiss has done this, where they're there on stage and the audience calls out obscure things that they want to hear that they haven't heard live, and then they have to do it. That's my challenge to us.
Also, there's a song that we do now that we haven't recorded yet. I lead Long Summer's Day, and I learned it from Jim McGeehan. It was in a minor key, and it just stayed with me. And I, looked at all of my CDs, and there was all these different versions of Long Summer's Day, but they were the major version. It wasn't it. And this was kind of before email, or before, we kind of could search on the internet and things like that. So I finally, fast forward, heard him sing it at Mystic a few years ago, and I went, oh, that's it! That's the song! After about 10 years of it kind of ruminating in my head. I just didn't know how to reach out to him. I didn't know him well enough at that point. And so, but now we do it. Better late than never.
That's the sign of a good song, if it gets
Yes,
stuck in your mind and
definitely.
you remember it all those years later.
Definitely. Yeah.
In terms of the arrangements, I have a question in a way. Well, for us, I think sometimes we're singing and we're trying different ideas out, and then someone will do something and it just kind of clicks, or it just locks, and it just feels like that's the right approach, or that's a right approach. Is that a similar process that you guys have?
Absolutely. And we throw people off sometimes, because a lot of times when we're going for a sound check, well, which one of you sings lead? And all of us. Which one of you sings soprano? All of us. Which one of you sings alto? All of us. We constantly switch off high, low, doesn't matter. And for instance, in Titanic, Deirdre and I switch off singing the high and the low from verse to verse, and people try to figure out who's singing. It's always fun.
or there are even a couple songs where one of us sings the lead with the melody, and then when the chorus comes, we hop into a harmony and someone else takes over the melody.
Right.
So you can see sometimes when people are watching us live, they're looking to see who's doing what, and,
Right,
and they
like-
try
like-
to figure it out.
And Mary is a good example. Mary, come join the religion.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people will tell us, will ask for that, and they'll say, yeah, it kind of gets you into this kind of trance. And we feel the same thing when we sing that. At least I do. We get into this, I don't know, this groove. And if we were to write that out on a piece of paper, I don't even know what it would look like.
One of the strengths I think we have as a group is every one of us as an individual singer, we're all very strong and versatile, and we're able to, as Troy was saying, soprano, alto, bass, tenor, whatever, we're all able to sing different styles, and then when you put us all together, it just makes it exponentially more diverse. And I think that's one reason we're all still together singing, is it's interesting. If it were boring, we wouldn't do it. We keep coming up with things that entertain and interest us, and hope that it entertains and interests other people too.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing is that when we all started this, we did it because it was fun. And it's still fun.
It's still fun.
Which is the important thing. If it wasn't fun, we wouldn't be doing it anymore. But we all have gone down the rabbit hole of doing the research, finding out more about all the songs that we do, and having some expertise to be able to do some of the workshops that we do with schools, and just it's still great fun. We haven't lost the fun, which is great, because sometimes people go down a rabbit hole of the academic side and don't come out. So most of the people we know that have gone down that hole come out, and they do a great job. So, but
or the reverse, where people hear the music, love it, but don't understand the connection to the work. You know, none of us are really deep water sailors, but
that's always our advice for young singers coming up. You know, we say, yeah, great, but get on the ships. Even if it's just, you know, at Mystic, and you see how the work is done, because it really affects how you approach singing shanties.
It really does internalize it, doesn't it?
Yeah. It definitely changes it. And we recognize that a lot of the performances we do are not necessarily the same speed that you would use when you're on ship, because some of them would be a lot slower, and there are some that would actually be faster. But so we're doing it for performance sake, but we still have ingrained in our bodies the feeling of the work that's being done. We've because we've pulled on lines, not for years. We've done some research, and we've been out there a little bit. I would love to be on a square rigger at sea, but
yeah. Actually, one funny story. Years and years ago, when I was starting singing more rowing songs, I was on the Mystic Whaler with Jeff Kaufman, and we were off Cuttyhunk Island, and we were about a mile or so off, and he said to the captain, "Hey, Cap, lower the little boat for the rowboat." He sat with me in the rowboat and had me row to Cuttyhunk singing rowing songs, just so I would really get the feel of it. And oh my, what an experience and difference it made in how I sang them after that.
What a good story. I can kind of imagine doing that 1 mile row. What a great experience.
Yeah, actually, I took it to a program probably in 2006 out on the on the Hudson River. There was a program where kids were helping to build rowboats and then learning to row. So I did the program for the summer with them, rowing, teaching them rowing songs and rowing on the Hudson. It was, people would stop and listen as they pass us by. It was pretty cool.
For sure. Oh, for sure. I
Just
would.
building on back to the New York connection. The South Street Seaport Museum, the monthly Shanty Sings. You're involved in those as well?
Yes, we have, Deirdre and I are hosting those alternate months, but it runs, we'll have our 12th one on April 4th. So we've done it a year now. And last month, Deirdre had over 700 visitors.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, 700. And it's a 2-hour session, and you sign up, and you sign up also to sing. And then a list is created from the people who want to sing, doing the best we can to.
And where can people find out more about that if they're interested?
They go right on the website for South Street Seaport Museum and look at their events and their programs and so forth.
And we will make sure we put the links for that in the show notes so people can find it there as well. I think
it was funny last month. We since there were so many people signed up, we did a bit of an experiment where we did Mama Liza, but handing off and muting and sequentially. It worked surprisingly well considering the limitations of Zoom.
Now, you guys were mentioning earlier the Ex-Seamen's Institute, and first of all, I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about them. I believe I've come across some recordings where they were singing with, I think they were backing up Louis Killen at the time and Stan Hugill as well. So I'm just curious about how their group sort of came about. And secondly, was that all done at South Street Seaport, or am I mistaken in that assumption?
They did travel. They appeared at Mystic. They traveled out to San Francisco and the West Coast to perform a bunch of times. Mostly they were New York and the Eastern Seaboard, but they formed when Lou Killen was at a Pinewoods weekend, and Frank and Bernie Clay had gone to it and fell in love with the music. And Bernie Clay was a bit of a
character,
an entrepreneur. He always had schemes and ideas about things. But they were the core, and Dan Aguiar, who was a huge Gordon Bach fan and that style, and John Townley, who was steeped in Americana type music. But they formed this group. They didn't really practice. They kind of had harmonies on the fly. They were a lot of fun. One of the funniest memories of childhood was John Townley was very short. And as
still
children,
is.
And as children, he thought it was funny. There were no railings at South Street Seaport on the pier. He would grab us by our jeans and the scruff of our shirt and swing us out over the East River near the pollution, the sewage, mind you. And it was just the wildest time back then.
But they sang at all sorts of events. They sang at, in fact, Frank had invited me to go to this one event where they were, it was a pre-movie party. It was amazing. They dressed up like pirates, which they didn't normally do, but they did because they were getting the big bucks. But Jeffrey Holder, the actor, was there, and it was fascinating because it was just this who's who at this party. But they were doing sea shanties, and so that was one of Bernie's things. He would find events like that.
Yeah.
So there were all these really unusual things, but they were in the summers, every Tuesday night at South Street Seaport, the Ex-Seamen would hold forth and do this. They did that for years and years.
Yeah, I just, Joy reminded me of a story we had to tell you guys because it's just, it's one of the odd moments of the Johnson Girls.
Which one?
The one where we wound up at the premiere of Prairie Home Companion.
Oh.
They had used the name the Johnson Girls women, and they had to get permission from us. And so I had them right into the contract that we had to be at the premiere. So we were at the after party, milling about, and Meryl Streep was talking to Lily Tomlin.
Lauren Bacall.
I mean Lauren Bacall. Why am I?
No, Lily
why am I
Tomlin.
saying Lily Tomlin?
No, that's right.
Yeah, Lindsay Lohan was in the off somewhere, but
Playing
but they
pool.
were talking about the music, and I was talking to them, and we were talking about. Meryl's like, yeah, I'm an actor. I'm not a singer. It's so hard to do this. How do you approach it as a singer? So I motioned the others came. We sang for them, and Meryl Streep was so wonderful, and she says, "I'd like you to meet my friend. This is Lauren." And there was Lauren Bacall, and Lauren was she said, "I love your voices," and it was just this surreal moment.
Wow.
Oh God. And it was funny because this started with a phone call from the producer, called me up and said, we need to get your permission to use your name in the movie. And I said, okay. And I thought about it, and they said, we can pay you $10. And I said, and we can get tickets to the premiere. And are we going to get the screen credit? So if you watch the credits, it says that the name was used by permission of the Johnson girls. And I didn't expect to get tickets to the after party. That was just, it was a work day the next day too. So it was a late night.
Well, that we could talk to you for hours, and I'm sure we will again. We would love to have you back, and I want to hear more of those stories as well.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun off the stage as well as on the stage.
We'll tell you about Texas next time.
Oh yeah, Texas.
Always make a note.
On episode 2, what happened in Texas?
Or how about when Deirdre was step dancing on the pub table?
Oh yeah.
A lock-in in Cornwall.
Lockdown.
Would you grace us with one more song of your choosing?
Well, we had talked about our eponymous piece, which is the Johnson Girl.
We got our name from a Menhaden fishing song called the Johnson Girls. Menhaden fish are small fish that are used for oil. They're not eaten. They are fished using a purse seine net, which is a very, very long net that looks like a lady's purse, and there's a drawstring, and it traps the fish in the net. Now, the fishermen then surround the net in multiple boats and drag the fish up into the boat, drag the nets with the fish up into the boats. And if you've seen pictures of it, there are several that are pretty amazing. The men have their thighs against the gunnels of the boat, and as they're pulling in the fish that are weigh so much, sometimes it's a ton of fish, you can see the veins popping out of their arms. So the difference in this song is, unlike a normal shanty where you're singing and your work is being done while you're singing the chorus, typically with this song, the work is done as you're silent or you're talking. You may talk about the girl you went out with last night as you're pulling them in, but there's a long pause between the singing. Now, we don't do the pause in the singing, but that's the way that song is done. So when we were looking for a name for the group, sometimes you have temporary names, but we couldn't find something that we really loved. So somebody was singing Johnson Girls and Is a Mighty Fine Girls. Why not? Great big legs and teensy feet. Why not? Well, I'm just going to go ahead and start it out. And you could sing along at home when you're watching this. Johnson girls is a mighty fine girls.
Walk around, honey, walk around.
You know them Johnson girls is a mighty fine girls.
Walk around, honey, walk around.
Well, they're neat in the waist, they got mighty fine legs.
Walk around, honey, walk around. Yeah, they're neat in the waist, they got mighty fine legs. Walk around, honey, walk around.
They got great big legs and a teensy feet.
Walk around, honey, walk around.
They got some great big legs and a teensy feet.
Walk around, honey, walk around.
Well, them Johnson girls is a mighty fine girls.
Walk around, honey, walk around.
You know them Johnson girls is a mighty fine girls.
Walk around, honey, walk around. They got something under yonder they call Jamaica jam. Walk around, honey, walk around. Well, it's hot as kite ham, but it's good, goddamn. Walk around, honey, walk around.
Beefsteak, beefsteak, make a little gravy.
Walk around, honey, walk around.
Well, it's
Your thing, my thing, make a little baby.
Walk around, honey, walk around.
Well, them Johnson girls is a mighty fine girls.
Walk around, honey, walk around.
You know them Johnson girls is a mighty fine girls.
Walk around, honey, walk around. Walk around, honey, walk around. Walk around, honey, walk around.
Well, that was a fantastic conversation. Wish that we had more time, and actually, after we stopped the record button, we talked about needing to follow that up with some more time with them. Anyway, getting into today's tall ship, we're going to take a look at the Peking, and we're looking at that ship because it spent many years docked at the South Street Seaport, and here it is.
Today's tall ship is the Peking, and we chose to feature this ship since it spent 40 years as a museum ship at the South Street Seaport in New York City, which ties into our conversation with the Johnson girls. Built in Hamburg and launched in 1911, Peking is a four-masted bark of steel construction for the hull and the rig, and represents the final generation of sailing ships made for long-distance world trade. Including the rig, Peking is about 380 feet long, 170 feet tall, 45 feet wide, and is 3,100 tons empty, about 8,000 loaded. The sail area is around 44,000 square feet, including 32 sails on 18 yards and controlled by 350 lines. Peking's trade route was between Europe and Chile, hauling general and manufactured goods to South America and returning with nitrate. The passage to South America took about 70 days, which was remarkably fast by early 20th century standards. Apart from a break caused by the First World War, this was her purpose until changes within the trade, such as the use of steamship in combination with the Panama Canal, forced a change in her career. During that time, something really special happened aboard the Peking. In 1929, a young man named Irving Johnson joined the crew, and as an amateur filmmaker, took footage of his voyage, which became the now famous film titled Around Cape Horn. The pictures were considered to be so important to maritime history that the British Museum made them part of their collection. Look this one up. It's very accessible, it's up on YouTube, and it's under an hour long, but it's some of the only footage we have from sailing on ships of this kind. It's truly awesome to see the ship in action and to learn from the late Captain Johnson's excellent, informative, and entertaining narration. After retiring from the nitrate trade, Peking was sold to Shaftesbury Homes in 1932, was renamed the Arethusa II, and was moored across the River Medway in Lower Upnor in the UK, where she served as a nautical school as part of an initiative to take boys off the streets and give them maritime training. Arethusa II was retired in 1974, had her original name restored, and up until quite recently served as a museum ship in New York City at the South Street Seaport. An aged and massive vessel like the Peking is a very difficult thing to keep around, and the Seaport was planning to send the vessel to the scrapyard. However, in 2012, an offer was made by the city of New York to return the ship to Hamburg as a gift from the city, but this was contingent upon raising funds in Germany to ensure the preservation of the vessel. The German government has been very generous, and Peking was transported to Germany in 2017. Extensive restoration work has been done and is ongoing. The Port of Hamburg and the German Port Museum, scheduled to open in the later 2020s, will feature a fleet of historic ships and cranes and will be expanded step by step toward creating a living history museum that highlights the technical side of maritime life, and the Peking will be the flagship attraction. Back in her home port after 70 years and given the royal treatment, this is a story with a happy ending.
Well, thanks so much, everyone, for watching again. We will be back in a couple weeks with a new episode. So if you liked what you saw here and you like what we're doing, please make sure to like and subscribe. And on behalf of all the guys and Pressgang Mutiny, we will see you next time.
Good night.
Thanks, all.
Good afternoon. Good morning.
Good day.
Bye-bye.
Oh, Mama Liza Jane. Oh, Mama Liza Jane. Well, I got a gal in Baltimore, Mama Liza Jane. She is waiting on that shore, Mama Liza Jane. But I got a gal in New York City, Mama Liza Jane. She is tall and real pretty, Mama Liza Jane. But I got a gal in South Carolina, Mama Liza Jane. Lips like honey and looks so fine, Mama Liza Jane. Oh, I got a gal in New Orleans, Mama Liza Jane. She's as hard as a Creole queen, Mama Liza Jane. Oh, Mama Liza Jane. Oh, Mama Liza Jane. The Johnson girls, they look so fine, Mama Liza Jane. They ain't got Jesus on their mind, Mama Liza Jane. They've got some great big hips, Mama Liza Jane. Built just like them battleships, Mama Liza Jane. They go walking down the street, Mama Liza Jane. All the little birdies go tweet, 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 woo, Mama Liza Jane. Oh, Johnson girls, they call you honey, Mama Liza Jane. All they want's all your money, Mama Liza Jane. Oh, Mama Liza Jane. Oh, Mama Liza Jane. Mama Liza, have you heard? Mama Liza Jane. I'm gonna buy you mockingbird, Mama Liza Jane. If that mockingbird don't sing, Mama Liza Jane. I'm gonna buy you a diamond ring, Mama Liza Jane. If that diamond ring don't shine, Mama Liza Jane. I'm gonna take it to the 5 and dime, Mama Liza Jane. 5 and dime won't take it back, Mama Liza Jane. I'm gonna throw across the railroad track, Mama Liza Jane. Well, big old train coming on real fast, Mama Liza Jane. Smash that diamond, must have been glass, Mama Liza Jane. Oh, Mama Liza Jane. Oh, Mama Liza Jane. Oh, Mama Liza Liza Jane. Oh, Mama Liza, Mama Liza Jane.
Like, I seriously look at it and I think to myself, like, what really is the number? Like, if someone put $100,000 in front of me, would I dress up as a pirate?